12 million people heard her call him a manipulative piece of shit. The internet turned her voice into a meme about toxic girlfriends and psychotic exes. Everyone knows exactly who the villain is in this story. Everyone is wrong. What they didn't hear was the 3 hours of emotional manipulation that preceded her breakdown, the deliberate provocations designed to make her snap, the systematic destruction of her self-worth that he documented so carefully, saving only the moments when she finally cracked. What they don't know is that she wasn't his first victim or his last. In the viral video that destroyed her life, every word she screamed was true. But truth doesn't matter when someone else controls the narrative, when private agony becomes public entertainment, when the person who broke you gets to decide how the story ends. The real question isn't whether she was right to be angry. It's whether any of us can survive having our worst 3 minutes define us forever. Chapter 1. The Recording. I should have known something was wrong when Marcus started recording. We'd been fighting for 20 minutes in his Tesla, parked outside Craig's house in the Hollywood Hills. The party bass thumped through the walls behind us, but all I could hear was my own voice getting higher and meaner with each word. "You're being paranoid, Zoe," Marcus said, his fingers drumming against the steering wheel. At 26, he still had that pretty boy face that got him cast as the love interest in 3 Netflix rom-coms. But his eyes had gone cold. Bethany's just being friendly. Friendly? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. She had her hand on your thigh during the entire dinner. Her Instagram story from tonight has you tagged in every single frame, and somehow I'm completely cropped out. So what? You tag me in everything too. I'm your girlfriend of 2 years, Marcus. She's a 22-year-old influencer with 3 million followers who's been sliding into your DMs since she hit town. That's when I saw it. The red recording indicator on his phone propped against the dashboard. My stomach dropped. Are you fucking recording this? Zoe. Turn it off. Turn it off. Right now. But I kept talking. That was my first mistake. I kept talking while he kept recording, and my voice climbed higher as the alcohol and Adderall I'd taken to stay skinny for tomorrow's photo shoot mixed into something ugly. I know what this is, I said, pointing at him with a manicured finger that was shaking. You want out, but you're too much of a coward to just break up with me. So you're going to make me look crazy and then play victim when I react. Is that the plan? Get me to have a breakdown on camera so you can show everyone how psychotic your ex-girlfriend is? You're being psychotic right now. And you're being a manipulative piece of shit. But that's nothing new, is it? Remember when you told Entertainment Tonight that I was supportive of your career when you knew damn well I was the one who got you that audition through my manager? Remember when you conveniently forgot to mention that I've been paying for your acting classes for 6 months? My voice was a saw blade now, cutting through 2 years of swallowed resentments. And let's talk about Bethany, since you want to pretend this is all in my head. Bethany, who you've been texting at 2 a.m., Bethany, who somehow knows that you hate cilantro and love that stupid Japanese restaurant in Silver Lake. Bethany, who posted a TikTok yesterday wearing your jacket. Yeah, I noticed it was your jacket, the one I bought you for your birthday. Zoe, stop? But I couldn't stop. The words had been building pressure for months, and now they exploded out of me like steam from a cracked pipe. You want to know what's really psychotic? Staying with someone you don't respect, leading me on while you audition replacements, making me feel crazy for noticing things that are actually happening. That's psychotic, Marcus. That's actually fucking psychotic. I was crying now, mascara running down my cheeks in black rivulets that would look terrible in photos. But I didn't care about photos. I cared that this man I'd supported and loved and defended was documenting my breakdown for reasons I couldn't even comprehend. I'm done, I said, reaching for the door handle. With you, with this, with all of it. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't you dare try to make this my fault when you were the one. When I was the one, what? I turned back to face him, and something in his expression made my blood freeze. He looked satisfied, like he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Nothing. Forget it. But I didn't forget it. Even as I stumbled out of his car in my ridiculous heels, even as I called an Uber with shaking hands, even as I cried in the back seat while some driver pretended not to notice, I couldn't forget that look on his face. 3 days later, the recording was everywhere. Chapter 2. Viral. The first time I heard my own voice screaming from someone else's phone, I was standing in line at Coffee Bean on Melrose. The girl in front of me, maybe 19, with perfect skin and the kind of effortless beach waves that took 2 hours to create, was watching TikTok with her friend. I recognized the audio immediately, that raw, desperate sound of my voice saying psychotic over and over again. But it was worse than I remembered. Somehow, in Marcus's editing, he'd cut out all of his responses, so it was just me, ranting like a madwoman at invisible provocations, me saying his name with venom, me accusing him of cheating without any context for why. The TikTok had been set to a trending song. The caption read, "When your toxic ex finally shows her true colours," with a skull emoji and hashtag psychoex, hashtag dodged a bullet, hashtag toxic women. It had 2.3 million views. "Oh my god," the girl whispered to her friend. "Have you seen this? This actress totally lost it on her boyfriend. She sounds completely unhinged." I pulled my baseball cap lower and my sunglasses higher, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I opened TikTok and searched Marcus's username. The original video had 12 million views. The comment section was a firing squad. "This is why men are scared to date actresses laughing out loud. She sounds absolutely psychotic. Marcus dodged a bullet. This is what happens when women don't get therapy." The entitlement, oh my god. Someone needs to check on this girl's mental health. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the duets. Hundreds of them. Other creators had taken my audio and acted out their own versions of psychotic ex-girlfriend behavior. They exaggerated my words, mocked my crying voice, turned my breakdown into a meme. One video showed a girl dramatically reenacting my rant while her boyfriend played video games, ignoring her completely. Caption, "Me when he doesn't text back for 2 hours, 4.8 million views." Another showed someone lip-syncing to my voice while putting on clown makeup. Caption, "POV, you're about to ruin your own life." 6.2 million views. By the time I got to the front of the line, my coffee order felt impossible to remember. The barista looked at me strangely, and I wondered if she recognized my voice from the viral audio. "Just a coffee." I managed, black. My phone buzzed with notifications I was afraid to check. Text messages from friends who'd seen the video, missed calls from my manager, emails from tabloid reporters asking for comment. But the one notification that made my stomach drop was from Netflix. "Hi Zoe, we need to discuss your involvement in the upcoming season of Valley High. Can you call me today? Minus Sarah." Valley High was my big break. After years of guest spots on procedurals and one-line roles in romantic comedies, I'd finally landed a recurring character on Netflix's biggest teen drama. The show was a cultural phenomenon, and my character Isabel, the manipulative mean girl with hidden depths, had become a fan favourite. The second season was supposed to start filming in 2 weeks. I was finally going to be a series regular, finally going to have the kind of steady income that would let me stop sharing a 2-bedroom apartment in North Hollywood with my roommate Carly. I called Sarah from the parking lot. "Zoe," she said, and I could hear the careful neutrality in her voice that people use when they're about to deliver bad news. "I think you know why I'm calling. The video." "The video? Look, personally, I think this is all bullshit. Relationships are messy. Everyone says things they regret. And your ex-boyfriend is clearly a piece of work for recording you without consent. But the network is concerned." "Concerned about what?" "About the optics. Valley High has a young audience. Parents trust us with their teenagers. The show's brand is aspirational, and right now you're trending for all the wrong reasons." I closed my eyes and leaned against my car. A Honda Civic with 127,000 miles on it that I'd bought used 3 years ago and still made payments on. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we need to postpone your storyline for season 2 while this dies down. Let the internet move on to the next scandal. Then we'll reassess." "For how long?" "I don't know. Maybe a few months. Maybe longer." The parking lot felt like it was tilting. "Sarah, I need this job. I signed a lease based on this job. I have rent and car payments and—" "I know, I'm sorry, this isn't personal, Zoe, it's business." After she hung up, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, watching people walk in and out of Coffee Bean with their normal problems and their normal lives. None of them were going viral for having a breakdown. None of them were losing their careers because their ex-boyfriend decided to weaponize their worst moment. I finally checked my other messages. 17 missed calls from my manager, 8 from my publicist, 43 text messages, including one from my mother that just said, "Call me," and one from my sister that said, "What the hell is happening?" But the text that made me finally start crying again was from Carly. "Saw the video. Coming home early from work. I'll pick up wine and ice cream. We'll figure this out." That night, sitting on our thrift store couch with a bottle of cheap Trader Joe's Pinot Grigio, I tried to explain to Carly how 24 hours had turned my life upside down. "It's not just Valley High," I said, scrolling through my phone with morbid fascination. 3 other auditions got cancelled. My commercial agent dropped me. The boutique where I do sponsored posts unfollowed me on Instagram. They can't all drop you because of one video. They can, if the video makes me a liability. Brands don't want to be associated with the psychotic ex-girlfriend. Casting directors don't want the drama. Everyone's distancing themselves before I can contaminate them too. Carly took the phone away from me. "Stop looking at the comments, it's only making it worse. I need to know what they're saying about me." "No, you don't. You need to figure out how to move forward." But moving forward felt impossible when the whole world had decided I was crazy. The recording had stripped away all context and turned me into a caricature of female hysteria. I was a meme now, a cautionary tale, a punchline. And Marcus was getting sympathy. Poor guy, stuck with such an unstable girlfriend. Lucky him for getting out when he did. The worst part was that some tiny voice in my head wondered if they were right. Maybe I was psychotic. Maybe I was toxic. Maybe I deserved everything that was happening to me. That voice got louder every time I refreshed TikTok and saw my breakdown remixed into someone else's content. Every time I read another think piece about why women my age were uniquely prone to emotional volatility. Every time someone I'd never met felt qualified to diagnose my mental health based on 3 minutes of audio recorded without my consent during the worst fight of my life. By the end of the week, #PsychoX had generated over 50 million views across platforms. I was famous, finally. Just not the way I'd ever wanted to be. Chapter 3. The Reckoning. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and expensive cologne, nothing like the legal aid clinic where I'd expected to end up. David Chen had taken my case pro bono after seeing the viral video, and his Century City office had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city, where my career was currently burning to the ground. "California is a 2-party consent state," he explained, sliding a thick folder across his mahogany desk. "That means both parties have to agree to record a conversation. Marcus violated the law when he recorded you without permission. But can we actually do anything about it?" "We can try. The problem is that once something goes viral, the damage is largely done. We can sue for invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, maybe revenge porn if we stretch the definition, but we can't unring the bell." I stared at the legal documents, dense with language I didn't understand. 3 weeks had passed since the recording went viral, and my life had become a masterclass in how quickly everything could fall apart. Valley High had officially written my character out of Season 2. My recurring role as Isabel was killed off in a drunk driving accident that happened off-screen between seasons. No dramatic death scene, no farewell episode, just a throwaway line about how the mean girl had wrapped her car around a tree after a party. The irony wasn't lost on me. "What are our chances of winning?" I asked. David leaned back in his chair. He was maybe 40, with greying temples and the kind of calm authority that came from handling celebrity meltdowns for a living. "Legally, pretty good. Ethically, we're on solid ground. Practically, that's harder to say. Marcus has a good legal team now, and they'll argue that you were in a public space, that the recording was justified for his own protection, that you were threatening him." "I wasn't threatening him." "I know, but they'll frame your emotional distress as aggression. They'll say he was documenting abuse for his own safety." That word abuse hit me like a physical blow. I never abused anyone. "I believe you, but the court of public opinion operates on different rules than actual courts." I thought about the comment sections I'd been obsessively reading. The way strangers felt qualified to diagnose me as abusive based on 3 minutes of audio. The way my anger had been transformed into evidence of my character. There's something else we need to discuss, David said gently. Marcus's team reached out about a settlement. What kind of settlement? Money in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement. You'd agree not to discuss the relationship publicly, not to contradict his version of events, and not to pursue legal action.
How much money?
$50,000. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. He wants to pay me $50,000 to shut up about the fact that he recorded me without consent and ruined my career? Essentially, yes. $50,000 would cover my rent for almost 2 years. It would give me time to figure out what came next, maybe take acting classes or learn a new skill. It was more money than I'd ever had in my bank account at once. But it also meant admitting that what happened to me was worth $50,000 and a promise to never speak about it again. What happens if I don't take it? We go to court. It could take years. The legal fees would be substantial, even with me working pro bono on the main case. And there's no guarantee we'd win or that any judgment would be larger than $50,000. But I'd be able to tell the truth. If we win, if the jury believes you over him, if the media covers our victory instead of just focusing on the spectacle of another celebrity legal battle. I stared out the window at the city sprawling below us. Somewhere out there, casting directors were meeting about projects I'd never be considered for. Producers were crossing my name off lists. Other actresses were getting opportunities that might have been mine if I hadn't gotten in a car with Marcus that night. Can I think about it? Of course, but Zoe. David's voice was gentle. Whatever you decide, you need to start thinking about what comes next. This scandal won't define you forever, but only if you don't let it. The drive home from Century City took 45 minutes in traffic. 45 minutes of my thoughts spinning in circles. NPR was doing a segment about social media and public shaming, and I had to turn off the radio when they started playing clips of my audio as an example of viral content with real-world consequences. Real-world consequences. As if my life was just a case study now. Carly was waiting for me when I got home, sitting at our kitchen table with her laptop open, and her expression I couldn't read. How did it go with the lawyer? I collapsed into the chair across from her. Marcus wants to pay me to shut up about what he did. Are you going to take it? I don't know. David says if we go to court it could take years and there's no guarantee we'd win. Carly turned her laptop around so I could see the screen. It was my Instagram page, which I hadn't looked at in weeks. My follower count had actually gone up, nothing like notoriety to boost your social media numbers. But the comments on my most recent post were brutal. I've been thinking, she said. Maybe this isn't about the money or the lawsuit or any of that. What do you mean? I mean, maybe this is about who you want to be on the other side of this. Do you want to be the woman who got paid to disappear? Or do you want to be the woman who fought back? I scrolled through the comments on my Instagram post, a photo I'd taken 3 weeks ago of my morning coffee. It felt like a relic from another life. Psycho. Get help. Career over laughing out loud. This is what mental illness looks like. But then I saw one that made me stop. I've been in an abusive relationship where my ex recorded our fights too. Thank you for showing that we don't have to be perfect victims to deserve respect. And another. The way people are treating you is exactly why women don't speak up about manipulation and emotional abuse. And another. Your ex is trash for violating your privacy like that. I hope you sue him for everything he's worth. For every 10 comments calling me crazy, there was one from someone who understood that what had happened to me was wrong. Someone who recognized that recording your partner without consent during a private argument was a violation, regardless of what was said. What if I don't take the money? I asked Carly. Then you fight, and maybe you lose, but at least you go down swinging. What if I lose everything? What if you win everything? That night, I called David and told him to reject the settlement offer. If Marcus wanted to silence me, he'd have to do it in court, under oath, where his pretty face and his Netflix rom-coms wouldn't be enough to convince a jury that recording your girlfriend without consent was justified. But first, I had to figure out how to survive the months or years it would take for the case to make its way through the legal system. I had to figure out how to rebuild a life from the ashes of my old one. I had to figure out who I was when I wasn't Zoe Martinez, the actress. When I wasn't Zoe Martinez, the psychotic ex-girlfriend. When I was just Zoe Martinez, a 28-year-old woman whose life had imploded on social media. and who was determined to build something better from the wreckage. The hardest part wasn't losing my career or my reputation or my sense of safety in the world. The hardest part was learning to trust my own voice again, after the entire internet had decided it wasn't worth listening to. But I was going to try. Chapter 4. The Spiral. The eviction notice was taped to my apartment door like a scarlet letter, bold red text that my neighbours couldn't miss as they walked past. 3 months behind on rent, 30 days to vacate or face legal action. I peeled it off quickly and shoved it into my purse next to the other notices I'd been collecting. Final demand from the electric company, past due warnings from my credit cards, a bill from the pharmacy for antidepressants I couldn't afford to refill. Inside the apartment, Carly was packing boxes. "You don't have to move out because of me," I said, though we both knew she couldn't afford this place on her barista salary alone. "I'm not moving out because of you. I'm moving out because I got that internship at the production company in Silver Lake, remember? The timing just works out." She was lying to be kind. The production company internship was unpaid, and Silver Lake was more expensive than North Hollywood. She was moving in with her boyfriend Jake to help me save face, but we both knew the truth. I'd become too expensive to live with. The legal battle with Marcus had been dragging on for 8 months. David had warned me it would be slow, but I hadn't understood what slow meant in legal terms. Depositions that got rescheduled, discovery motions that took months to resolve, Marcus's team filing for dismissal on every possible ground. Meanwhile, I was hemorrhaging money on basic survival. The acting work had dried up completely. Not just the big roles, I couldn't even get hired as background talent. Casting directors remembered my name from the viral video, and none of them wanted that energy on their set. I'd tried other jobs, retail, food service, temp work, but my face was too recognizable in LA. Someone would always recognize me as that psycho actress, and either film me at work for TikTok content or complain to management that I made customers uncomfortable. The bottle of wine on the kitchen counter was my third this week, and it was only Wednesday. "Zoe," Carly said gently, "have you thought about maybe leaving LA for a while?" "And go where?" "I don't know, somewhere people don't recognize you, somewhere you can start over." Start over. The phrase felt like admitting defeat, but defeat was starting to look like the only option that didn't involve homelessness. That night, alone in the apartment for the first time in years, I sat on the floor surrounded by rejection letters from jobs I was overqualified for, and typed cities where actors can teach into Google. Portland had low cost of living and a decent art scene. Austin was weird and welcoming to creative types. Chicago had theatre and film programs that might need instructors. But the listing that made me stop scrolling was from a small liberal arts college in Millfield, Vermont. Visiting artist position, acting and media studies. 1-year appointment, housing provided. Experience with social media and digital performance preferred. The last line felt like the universe had a sense of humour. My catastrophic experience with social media was apparently now a qualification. I stared at the job description until my eyes blurred. Assistant Professor Zoe Martinez. It had a nice ring to it, even if it was just a temporary position at a school I'd never heard of in a town that probably had more cows than people. The application deadline was in 2 weeks. I'd need letters of recommendation from people who still returned my calls, a teaching philosophy I'd never thought about, and the willingness to admit that my acting career was over, at least for now. But I'd also need hope that there was life after viral infamy, that maybe somewhere in the mountains of Vermont, I could figure out who I was when I wasn't performing for anyone. I opened a new document and began typing, application for visiting artist position, Zoe Martinez. Chapter 5. Millfield. The bus from Boston took 4 hours and stopped in 6 towns that seemed to exist primarily to service the bus route. Millfield was the smallest, just a main street with a coffee shop, a general store and a bookstore that doubled as the town's social hub. Millfield College sat on a hill overlooking the valley. Brick buildings that looked like they'd been there since the Revolutionary War, surrounded by mountains that were just starting to turn orange and red with early fall colour. My entire life fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Everything else I'd sold, donated or left behind in LA. Dr. Sarah Hutchins, the department chair who'd hired me over Zoom, met me at the campus entrance. She was maybe 60, with grey hair and a messy bun. and the kind of practical clothes that suggested she'd rather be hiking than sitting in committee meetings. "You must be exhausted," she said, loading my bags into her ancient Subaru. "The faculty housing is about 10 minutes from campus. Nothing fancy, but it's got good Wi-Fi and a view of the mountains." The house was a tiny craftsman cottage with one bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a front porch that looked out over a valley so green it seemed artificial. After months of sirens and traffic and helicopters, the silence felt almost aggressive. "Classes start Monday," Sarah said, handing me keys that looked like they might open a medieval castle. 15 students in your acting I section, 12 in digital media ethics. Most of them are from New York or Boston, so they think they know everything about the entertainment industry. Digital media ethics. Your specialty, according to your application. The ethics of social media, privacy in the digital age, the intersection of technology and performance. The students requested it specifically after we announced you were joining the faculty. My stomach dropped. They know who I am? Some do. We've had discussions about it with the relevant students. Everyone's agreed to treat you as Professor Martinez, not as a former celebrity or internet meme. But Zoe, she paused at the door. These kids are smart and they're curious. They're going to learn from you whether you plan to teach them or not. The question is what you want them to learn. That night, I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee and tried to imagine what I'd say to 15 college students about acting when I wasn't sure I'd ever act professionally again. What I'd tell 12 students about digital media ethics when my own digital life had been a disaster. The truth was, I had more to teach about failure than success, about what happened when your worst moment became public property, about surviving when the entire internet decided you were the villain of your own story. Maybe that was enough to start with. Chapter 6. First day. "So," I said to the 12 students sitting around the seminar table, "who wants to tell me what ethics means?" It was my second class of the day. Acting I had gone reasonably well. Basic exercises, introductions, reviewing the syllabus. These students knew my story, but they were treating me like a professor, not a curiosity. Digital media ethics was different. These students had requested the class specifically because of who I was. They wanted to understand how someone could go viral for all the wrong reasons. A girl with purple hair raised her hand. "Ethics is about doing the right thing even when no one's watching." "Good. Anyone else?" "It's about considering the consequences of your actions on other people," offered a boy with thick-rimmed glasses. "Also good. Now how many of you have posted something online that you later regretted?" Every hand went up. "How many of you have shared or commented on content about someone else's personal life?" Slower this time, but most hands still rose. "How many of you have ever recorded someone without their permission?" The hands went down, except for one girl in the back corner. She looked uncomfortable but kept her hand up. "Thank you for being honest," I said. "Can you tell us about it?" "My roommate was drunk and saying horrible things about our friend. I recorded it to show the friend what she really thought about her." "And did you show the friend?" "Yes." "What happened?" "It destroyed their friendship and probably made everything worse." "But you thought you were doing the right thing." "At the time, yeah. I thought she deserved to know the truth." I walked to the whiteboard and wrote, "Good intentions don't justify harmful actions." This semester, we're going to examine the ethics of digital media through case studies. Some will be about celebrities and public figures. Some will be about ordinary people whose private moments became public content. And yes, we'll be discussing what happened to me. A student in the front row raised her hand. "Are you comfortable talking about it?" "Comfortable? No. But I think there's value in examining how we got to a place where recording someone without consent during a private argument can be turned into entertainment for millions of people. I think there's value in understanding how algorithms amplify our worst impulses and reward cruelty over compassion." I paused, looking at their faces. Young, earnest, mostly well-intentioned. They'd grown up on social media. It was the water they swam in. "Your generation is the first to have your entire adolescence documented online. You're the first to navigate friendship and romance and identity formation in spaces that are simultaneously private and completely public. That's unprecedented in human history, and we're all making it up as we go along." Another student raised her hand. "Do you think what happened to you was fair?" What do you think? I think your ex-boyfriend was a jerk for recording you, but also some of the things you said were pretty harsh. They were. I was angry and hurt, and I said things I regretted. But here's the question I want you to think about. Should the worst 3 minutes of your life define you forever? Should your private breakdown become public entertainment? And who gets to decide? The girl with purple hair leaned forward. But if someone's being abusive, was I being abusive? The room got quiet. I could see them thinking, weighing their knowledge of the viral video against the person standing in front of them. I don't know, she said finally. I only heard 3 minutes, edited by someone who wanted to make you look bad. Exactly. And that's the problem with cancel culture and viral justice. We make permanent judgments based on incomplete information, and we forget that the people in these videos are real humans with full, complicated lives. For the next hour, we discussed the difference between accountability and punishment, the role of social media platforms in amplifying conflict, the psychology of mob behavior online. When class ended, a few students lingered. Professor Martinez, the girl who'd admitted to recording her roommate, approached me. I've never apologized to my roommate for what I did. I always thought I was right. And now I think maybe being right isn't the same as being kind. That afternoon, walking back to my cottage through the Vermont woods, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Useful, like maybe my public humiliation could serve a purpose beyond entertainment. Like maybe there was life after viral infamy, and it might even be worth living. Chapter 7. Emma. Emma Morrison sat in the front row of my acting I class, but she never participated in exercises. While other students threw themselves into improvisation and scene work, Emma watched from the sidelines, notebook in hand, scribbling observations like an anthropologist studying human behavior. After 3 weeks, I finally asked her to stay after class. I notice you prefer observing to participating, I said, stacking scripts on my desk. Is everything okay? Emma was 19, with the kind of carefully constructed appearance that screamed, I'm trying to be invisible. Oversized sweatshirts, hair that fell across her face, posture that suggested she'd rather disappear into the furniture. I'm just not good at it, she said quietly. Acting. Pretending to be someone else. What made you sign up for the class? It was the only arts elective that fit my schedule. I'm pre-med. Pre-med students taking acting classes usually fell into 2 categories. They wanted an easy A, or they were desperately unhappy with their chosen path. Emma didn't strike me as someone looking for easy anything. Can I ask you something? I said, sitting on the edge of my desk to seem less intimidating. When you watch the other students do scene work, what do you notice? She considered this. They're all performing themselves like they think they're becoming different characters, but they're really just being louder or quieter versions of who they already are. That's a very sophisticated observation. My mum always said I was good at seeing through people's acts. Something in her voice suggested this wasn't entirely a compliment in her family. Emma, what if I told you that being good at seeing through performance makes you potentially excellent at creating it? Over the next few weeks, I worked with Emma one-on-one during office hours. Instead of throwing her into scene work with classmates, I gave her exercises in observation and mimicry. I had her study people in the campus coffee shop and write character sketches. I taught her that acting wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about finding the truth in artifice. The breakthrough came during week 6. Emma had been working on a monologue from the Glass Menagerie, Laura's speech about her glass animals. She'd been approaching it technically, hitting all the right emotional beats without connecting to the material. Tell me about a collection you had as a child, I said. I didn't really collect things. Okay, tell me about something you cared about that other people thought was weird or stupid. Emma was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. I used to film myself, she said finally, like talking to an imaginary audience, pretending I had a YouTube channel or was hosting a TV show. I'd set up my phone and just talk about my day or books I was reading or things I noticed about people. That sounds like performance to me. My dad found the videos when I was 15. He said it was narcissistic and attention-seeking, made me delete all of them. How did that make you feel? Like maybe he was right. Like maybe wanting to be seen was selfish. I felt something click into place. Not just about Emma's reluctance to perform, but about my own relationship with visibility and shame. Emma, what if I told you that wanting to be seen isn't selfish? What if I told you it's one of the most human desires we have, and that shame about that desire is what makes us perform badly, not the desire itself? When she performed the monologue again, something had shifted. She wasn't hiding behind the words anymore, she was using them to reveal something true about loneliness and the fear of being seen. "That was beautiful," I said when she finished. It felt scary, like I was too exposed. That's how you know you're doing it right. After class, Emma lingered again. "Professor Martinez, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Do you regret making that recording go viral? I mean, I know you didn't make it go viral, but do you regret the fight that got recorded?" "I regret a lot of things about that night. I regret the things I said. I regret not noticing Marcus was recording. I regret not walking away before it escalated. But do you regret being angry? Like, do you wish you just stayed quiet and let him treat you badly?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "No, I don't regret being angry. I regret how I expressed it, but not the anger itself. Sometimes anger is the appropriate response to being mistreated." Emma nodded slowly. "My mum always said that ladies don't get angry, that if you have to raise your voice, you've already lost the argument." "And what do you think about that now?" "I think maybe some arguments are worth losing if it means you don't lose yourself." That afternoon, I called David Chen with an update on the legal case. Marcus's team was still trying to settle, but now they were offering more money and fewer restrictions on my ability to speak about what happened. "They're getting nervous," David explained. "Discovery is turning up some interesting things about your ex-boyfriend's pattern of behavior. Apparently, you weren't the first girlfriend he recorded without consent. There were others? 3 that we know of. One of them is willing to testify that he used recordings to manipulate and control their relationship. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt something that might have been hope. What does this mean? It means we might actually win this thing, and it means your story might help other women who've experienced similar violations." That night, I sat on my porch and thought about Emma's question. Did I regret being angry? Did I regret being loud and messy and human in a moment when I should have been composed and graceful? The answer was still no. But now I was beginning to understand that my anger and my willingness to fight back against what Marcus did to me might serve a purpose beyond my own vindication. Maybe that was worth the price I'd paid. Chapter 8. The Verdict. The courtroom in downtown Los Angeles felt like a theatre where I was both performer and audience. 18 months after Marcus had recorded our fight, I sat at the plaintiff's table wearing a navy blue blazer that Sarah Hutchins had helped me pick out over FaceTime, watching a jury of 12 strangers decide whether my privacy was worth protecting. David Chen had warned me that trials were unpredictable, but I hadn't expected how surreal it would feel to have my worst moment dissected by lawyers and presented as evidence. Marcus's attorney, a sharp-suited woman named Patricia Flores, played edited segments of the recording, while arguing that her client had been documenting abusive behavior for his own protection. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said during closing arguments, "Mr. Garcia was a victim of verbal abuse, who had the foresight to document the toxic behavior he was experiencing. Ms. Martinez's lawsuit is simply an attempt to silence her victim and avoid accountability for her actions. She was good. I had to give her that. She made Marcus sound like a battered spouse, protecting himself from a dangerous partner, rather than an aspiring actor who'd found a creative way to end a relationship while generating viral content. But David was better. The defendant wants you to believe this case is about verbal abuse, he told the jury during his closing. But this case is actually about consent, privacy, and the weaponization of intimate moments. Ms. Martinez had no idea she was being recorded. She was having what she believed to be a private argument with someone she trusted. Mr. Garcia violated California's privacy laws, edited the recording to remove his own inflammatory statements, and distributed it publicly to millions of people without her consent. He paused, making eye contact with several jurors. Ask yourselves, how would you feel if your worst moment, your angriest, most hurt, most vulnerable 3 minutes, was secretly recorded by someone you loved, edited to make you look as bad as possible, and then shared with the entire world for their entertainment? The jury deliberated for 6 hours. I spent those hours in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse. unable to eat or focus on anything except the imaginary conversations I was having with the 12 strangers who were deciding my fate. Carly had flown in from LA to be there for the verdict. She sat across from me, scrolling through social media updates about the trial. "People are split," she reported. "About half the comments are supporting you, half are still calling you crazy." "What are they saying?" "Mostly that it doesn't matter if Marcus broke the law. You still said what you said, and no legal victory can change that." She was right, of course. Even if the jury found in my favor, the recording would still exist. I would still be the woman who called her ex-boyfriend a manipulative piece of shit in front of 12 million strangers. No legal victory could undo that. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need to undo it. Maybe I just needed the world to understand that being angry, even being ugly in your anger, didn't give someone else the right to violate your privacy and weaponize your emotions. The call came at 3:47 p.m. The jury has reached a verdict. Back in the courthouse, I sat between David and Carly, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit on them to keep still. In the matter of Martinez versus Garcia, on the charge of invasion of privacy, we find in favor of the plaintiff. The words hit me like a physical blow. In favor of the plaintiff. That was me. I had won. On the charge of intentional infliction of emotional distress, we find in favor of the plaintiff. In the matter of damages, we award the plaintiff $750,000 in compensatory damages and $1.2 million in punitive damages. The courtroom erupted in whispers and rustling papers. $1.95 million. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. But more importantly, it was validation. 12 strangers had listened to both sides and decided that what Marcus did to me was wrong. Outside the courthouse, David held a brief press conference. "This verdict sends a clear message," he said into a cluster of microphones. "Recording someone without their consent and distributing that recording publicly is a serious violation of privacy that carries real consequences. Ms. Martinez's courage in fighting back despite enormous public pressure has helped establish important precedent for protecting privacy rights in the digital age." A reporter shouted a question. "Ms. Martinez, do you have any regrets about the things you said in the original recording?" I stepped up to the microphone. For 18 months I'd avoided speaking publicly about the case, letting David handle all media inquiries. But now, vindicated by a jury and standing on the courthouse steps where so many people had fought for justice before me, I had something to say. "I regret the pain my words caused," I said. "I regret that a private argument became public entertainment. But I don't regret fighting back when someone violated my trust and privacy. And I hope this verdict encourages other people, especially women, to stand up when someone tries to weaponize their private moments against them." That night, in my hotel room overlooking downtown LA, I called Emma Morrison. She was in her second semester at Millfield, taking advanced acting and considering switching her major from pre-med to theatre. "Professor Martinez, I saw the news. You won." "I did. How are classes going?" "Really good. I got cast in the spring production of The Tempest. I'm playing Miranda." "That's wonderful. Miranda's a beautiful role." "I keep thinking about what you said, about how wanting to be seen isn't selfish. I think I'm finally starting to believe you." After we hung up, I stood at the window looking out at the city where my career had imploded, and apparently, where it might begin again. My phone was buzzing with interview requests, meeting invitations, project proposals. People who hadn't returned my calls in 2 years suddenly wanted to work with me again. But I wasn't the same person who'd lost everything in this city. I was someone who'd learned to find value in failure, purpose in humiliation, and strength in the willingness to fight back even when the odds seemed impossible. Tomorrow I would fly back to Vermont and finish out my teaching contract. In 4 months I would have to decide whether to stay in academia or return to the entertainment industry that had cast me out. But tonight I was simply a woman who had stood up for herself and won. After 18 months of being told I was crazy, toxic and wrong, 12 strangers had decided I was right. It felt like the first deep breath I'd taken since that night in Marcus's car. Chapter 9. The Offer. The email came on a Tuesday morning in late spring, when the Vermont mountains were exploding with that particular green that makes you understand why people write poetry about nature. "Ms. Martinez," it began, "I hope this message finds you well. My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm a producer at Meridian Entertainment. We're developing a limited series about the psychology of viral culture and social media manipulation, and we'd love to discuss the possibility of you serving as both consultant and lead actress. I read the email 3 times before the words fully registered. Then I walked to my office at the college and read it again. The project was called Amplified, a 6-episode series about 3 women whose lives are destroyed by viral content and how they navigate the aftermath. 1 episode would be based directly on my story. They wanted me to play myself. The offer was substantial, more money than I'd made in my entire acting career combined. Executive producer credit, final approval on scripts related to my story, and they wanted to film it in LA. Dr. Hutchins found me an hour later, still staring at my computer screen. "You look like someone who's received interesting news," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I turned the laptop toward her so she could read the email. "This is quite an opportunity," she said after a moment. "It is, but you don't sound excited." I'd been asking myself the same question since opening the email. This was everything I'd wanted before Marcus's recording destroyed my career. Recognition, financial security, the chance to tell my own story instead of having it told by others. So why did the thought of returning to LA make my stomach clench? "I keep thinking about what it means to go back," I said. "Whether I'm ready for that level of public attention again." "And what do you think?" "I think I'm afraid of becoming that person again. The one who measured her worth by how many people were paying attention to her." Sarah nodded. "What would it mean to take this job as the person you are now, rather than the person you were before?" That afternoon I called Jennifer Walsh to discuss the project. She was enthusiastic, articulate, and clearly passionate about telling stories that examined social media's impact on mental health and privacy. "We want to show the human cost of viral culture," she explained. "Not just the public humiliation, but the long-term psychological effects, the way cancel culture can destroy someone's sense of self, the difference between accountability and cruelty." "And you want me to relive my worst experience on camera?" "We want you to reclaim your narrative, to show audiences what the viral video didn't show, the context, the aftermath, the process of rebuilding your life. Most people only know you as a 3-minute audio clip. This would be your chance to show them who you actually are." "What if who I actually am isn't interesting enough for television?" Jennifer laughed. "Zoe, you survived public humiliation, fought a legal battle against someone with more resources than you, and rebuilt your life from scratch. You went from viral villain to college professor. That's not just interesting, it's inspiring." That evening, I sat on my porch with Emma Morrison, who'd become not just my student, but something approaching a friend despite our age difference. She was home for the summer, working at a theatre camp for kids while deciding between graduate programs in theatre and clinical psychology. "So what's holding you back?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "I'm afraid of losing what I've found here. This sense of purpose that isn't tied to fame or recognition. The ability to help people without needing their validation in return." "But couldn't you do both? Use the platform to help even more people?" "Maybe. Or maybe I'd get sucked back into caring about reviews and ratings and social media engagement. Maybe I'd lose perspective again." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? When I first started taking your class, I looked up everything about you. The viral video, the legal case, all of it. And I realized that the person in that recording, angry, hurt, lashing out, wasn't a monster. She was just someone who'd reached her breaking point. But the person teaching my class, patient, thoughtful, willing to admit her mistakes, she was someone I wanted to learn from." She paused, watching the sunset paint the mountains orange and pink. "Maybe the point isn't choosing between those 2 versions of yourself. Maybe the point is integrating them. Being someone who can still feel angry about injustice but who's learnt better ways to channel it." That night, I called my parents for the first time in months. Since the trial, we'd been slowly rebuilding our relationship, but it was still fragile, still marked by their disappointment in how I'd handled my public fall from grace. "Mija," my mother said when I told her about the television offer, "are you sure you want to put yourself through all that again?" "I'm not sure about anything, Mom, but I'm starting to think that being unsure is okay, that maybe I can take risks without having to know exactly how they'll turn out." My father got on the line. You've built something good in Vermont, something stable. Why give that up? I'm not giving it up, Dad. I'm expanding it. And if this new show fails? If people attack you again? Then I'll deal with it. I'm not the same person who fell apart when Marcus's video went viral. I've learned how to separate other people's opinions from my own sense of worth. How can you be sure? I thought about my students, about the way Emma had transformed from invisible observer to confident performer, about the letters I'd received from people who said my case had helped them understand consent and privacy in new ways, about the quiet satisfaction I felt at the end of each day, knowing I'd used my experience to help others navigate their own struggles. Because I've spent 2 years learning that my value doesn't come from what other people think of me. It comes from what I'm able to give to the world. The next morning I called Jennifer Walsh and accepted the offer, but I negotiated 2 additional conditions. The show would donate a portion of its profits to organisations supporting digital privacy rights, and I would maintain my teaching position at Millfield, returning to Vermont between filming seasons. You want to keep teaching? Jennifer sounded surprised. I want to keep learning. My students teach me as much as I teach them. That's not something I'm willing to give up. 3 weeks later, I stood in my empty cottage, loading my car for the drive back to Los Angeles. But this time, it felt like expansion rather than retreat. I was returning to the city that had broken me, but I was bringing everything I'd learned in the mountains. Emma helped me load the last box into my car. "Are you nervous?" she asked. Terrified, I admitted, but also excited, and I think those feelings can coexist. As I drove south toward LA, I thought about the difference between the woman who'd left this city 2 years ago and the one returning now. That woman had measured success by external validation, followers, roles, recognition. This woman had learned to find validation from within, from the knowledge that she was using her voice and experience to make the world slightly better than she'd found it. The viral video would always exist. I would always be the woman who called her ex-boyfriend a manipulative piece of shit in front of millions of strangers. But now I was also the woman who'd fought back against privacy violations, the professor who'd helped students understand the ethics of digital media, the person who'd turned public humiliation into personal growth. I was all of those things, and they didn't contradict each other. They made me whole. Chapter 10. Full Circle. The Amplified premiere was held at the Egyptian Theatre in Hollywood, the same neighbourhood where I'd once waited tables between auditions, dreaming of the moment when my name would be on a movie theatre marquee. 2 years after fleeing LA in disgrace, I was walking a red carpet again, but everything was different this time. Instead of a borrowed designer dress and rented jewellery, I wore a simple black suit that I'd bought with my teaching salary. Instead of desperately trying to say the right thing to entertainment reporters, I spoke honestly about privacy rights and digital ethics. Instead of measuring success by flashbulbs and social media engagement, I measured it by the conversations the show might start. "Zoe," a reporter from Variety called my name. "How does it feel to be back in Hollywood?" "It feels like coming home as a different person," I said. "Someone who's learned that authenticity matters more than perfection." The show itself was better than I'd dared to hope. Jennifer Walsh and her team had crafted something that was both deeply personal and universally relevant, examining not just my story but the broader cultural forces that turn private moments into public entertainment. The episode, based on my experience, didn't shy away from my mistakes. It showed me saying cruel things to Marcus, showed me struggling with anger and insecurity and the desperate need for validation, but it also showed what the viral video had edited out. Marcus's manipulation, his deliberate provocation, the way he'd turned our relationship into content for his own benefit. Most importantly, it showed the aftermath, the depression, the isolation, the slow process of rebuilding my sense of self, the teaching, the legal battle, the gradual understanding that my worth wasn't determined by public opinion. After the screening, at the after-party on a rooftop overlooking the city, I found myself in conversation with other women who'd experienced viral humiliation. "The hardest part," said Maria Santos, a former politician whose private text messages had been leaked during a campaign, "wasn't losing the election. It was learning to trust my own judgment again, after months of being told I was delusional for thinking the leak was politically motivated." "Yes," I said. "It's the gaslighting aspect. When the whole world tells you that your reaction to being violated is worse than the violation itself." Dr. Angela Chen, a psychiatrist who'd been publicly shamed for a research paper taken out of context, nodded. The isolation is designed to break you, make you doubt your own perception of reality, make you think maybe you deserve what's happening to you. We were an unlikely support group, women from different industries and backgrounds, united by the experience of having our worst moments weaponized against us. But we understood something about each other that the rest of the world couldn't grasp, that surviving viral humiliation required rebuilding, not just your reputation, but your entire sense of self. The show doesn't end with your vindication in court, Maria observed. That's not really the point, is it? No, I agreed. The point is that you can be both. The person who made mistakes and the person who learned from them. The person who was hurt and the person who chose to heal. Those identities don't cancel each other out. Later that evening, I stepped outside onto the rooftop terrace. LA sprawled below me, the same city that had chewed me up and spit me out 2 years earlier. But now it looked different. Not like a place that had rejected me, but like a place where I'd learned essential lessons about resilience. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, who was watching the premiere from Vermont with other students from the program. "Professor, you were amazing. The whole dining hall cheered when you won the court case. Can't wait for you to get back and tell us about tonight." I smiled, typing back, "Can't wait to be back. Save me some Vermont maple cookies." Jennifer Walsh found me on the terrace. "So," she said, "how are you feeling about everything?" "Grateful," I said, surprising myself with the honesty of it. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Tonight I realized it was just beginning. The network wants to know if you'd be interested in developing your own show, something about the intersection of education and entertainment, teaching empathy through storytelling. The offer would have sent the old me into a frenzy of excitement and anxiety. This version of me considered it calmly. I'd be interested in hearing more, but whatever I do next, it has to serve something larger than just my career. It has to help people. I think that's exactly why they want to work with you. The next morning, I drove to Millfield College's LA alumni office, where I was scheduled to give a talk to recent graduates working in the entertainment industry. 25 young people sat in folding chairs, most of them struggling with the same questions I'd faced at their age. How do you maintain integrity in an industry built on image? How do you separate your worth from your success? How do you survive failure without losing yourself? The thing nobody tells you about going viral for the wrong reasons, I said, is that it forces you to confront who you are when everything external is stripped away. Your reputation, your career, your social media following, all of it can disappear overnight. What's left is just you, and the question of whether that's enough. A young woman raised her hand. How do you know if it's enough? You don't, until it has to be. But I can tell you this, the version of myself I discovered during my lowest point, the teacher, the advocate, the person who could transform humiliation into healing, that version was stronger and more valuable than the actress who'd built her identity on other people's approval. After the talk, several attendees approached me with their own stories of public failure and private recovery. I exchanged contact information, offered to connect them with resources, promised to stay in touch. This, I realized, was my actual job now. Not performing for audiences, but creating connection between people who'd survived similar struggles, using my platform to amplify voices that had been silenced by shame. The drive back to Vermont took 2 days, with an overnight stop in Denver to visit my parents. They met me at a restaurant near their house, and for the first time in years, our conversation wasn't strained by unspoken disappointments. "You look different," my mother said, studying my face across the dinner table. "Different how?" "Peaceful, like you're not performing anymore, even when people are watching." My father, who'd spent the past 2 years worried that I'd never recover from the scandal, smiled. "We watched the show last night. We're proud of you, Mija. Not just for what you accomplished, but for who you became." That night, in my childhood bedroom, I wrote in the journal I'd started keeping during my darkest days in LA. I used to think redemption meant returning to who I was before everything went wrong. I thought healing meant erasing the damage, pretending the viral video never happened, getting back to the life I'd planned. I understand now that redemption is integration, learning to hold all the versions of yourself simultaneously, the woman who made mistakes and the woman who learnt from them, the person who was hurt and the person who chose to heal. the actress who lost everything, and the teacher who found her purpose. I am all of these people. They don't contradict each other. They complete me. The final drive to Vermont took 8 hours through mountains that seemed to welcome me home. I'd left Millfield as someone running away from her past. I was returning as someone who'd learned to carry her history as wisdom rather than shame. My cottage looked exactly the same. Small, simple, surrounded by forest that changed with the seasons but always provided shelter. I unpacked my car, made coffee, sat on my front porch as the sun set behind the mountains. Tomorrow classes would start again. 15 new students in Acting 1 who would teach me as much as I taught them. 12 students in digital media ethics who would challenge me to think more deeply about privacy, consent, and the responsibility that comes with having a voice. My phone buzzed with notifications, reviews of the show, interview requests, social media mentions, but I didn't check them immediately. Instead, I sat in the silence that had once crushed me in a coffee shop in Los Angeles and found that it no longer felt empty. It felt full of possibility. Epilogue, 5 years later. The Millfield College commencement ceremony was held on the quad under a Vermont sky so blue it seemed artificial. I sat with the other faculty members, watching 127 students cross the stage to receive their diplomas. Emma Morrison was among them, graduating summa cum laude with a double major in theatre and psychology. She'd been accepted to graduate programs at Yale, Northwestern, and UCLA, but had chosen to defer for a year to work with a non-profit that provided mental health resources to young performers. "Professor Martinez," she said when she found me after the ceremony, diploma in hand and parents beaming beside her, "I have something to tell you. Congratulations on your acceptance to WA. Not that, well, that too, but something else." She paused, suddenly nervous. "I've been offered a role, a real one, in an independent film about social media addiction. It's a small budget, but the script is incredible, and the director specifically asked for me after seeing my senior project." "Emma, that's wonderful." The thing is, I almost said no, because I was scared of wanting it too much, scared of what would happen if I failed publicly. "And what changed your mind?" "You did. You taught me that failure isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Silence is. Not using your voice because you're afraid of how people might judge it. That's the real tragedy." She hugged me then, this young woman who transformed from invisible observer to confident artist, and I felt the particular satisfaction that comes from watching someone discover their own strength. That afternoon, I drove to the regional airport to catch my flight to Los Angeles. Amplified had been renewed for a second season, and I was due in the writer's room on Monday to begin developing new episodes about digital privacy and consent. But first I had a stop to make. The cemetery in North Hollywood was smaller than I remembered, tucked between a strip mall and a freeway overpass. I found the grave I was looking for in the older section, where the headstones were simpler and the landscaping less manicured. "Hi, Marcus," I said, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers next to his marker. He died 8 months earlier in a car accident on the 405. No drugs or alcohol, just bad weather and worse timing. The news had reached me through mutual friends, and I'd felt complicated. Sadness for a life cut short, relief that our legal battle was definitively over, something that might have been forgiveness, though I wasn't sure if it was for him or for myself. "I thought you should know that I don't hate you anymore," I continued. "I understand now that hurt people, and you were carrying your own pain when you recorded me. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it helps me make sense of it." A plane passed overhead, probably carrying travelers between the life they'd left behind and the one waiting for them in some distant city. "I also wanted to thank you, which probably sounds crazy, but what you did to me, as terrible as it was, forced me to discover who I am when everything else is stripped away. You helped me find my actual purpose, even if you didn't mean to." The wind rustled through the palm trees that lined the cemetery. Somewhere nearby, traffic hummed along the freeway, carrying people toward their own uncertain futures. "I hope you found peace," I said finally. "I hope wherever you are now you understand that we were both just kids who didn't know how to love each other without causing damage." That evening I sat in my hotel room overlooking the Hollywood Hills, preparing for tomorrow's writers' meeting. My laptop was open to a document titled Season 2, Episode 1, The Aftermath, and I was writing about what happens after the cameras stop rolling, after the courtroom drama ends, after the viral moment fades from public memory. I was writing about the quiet work of rebuilding a life, about learning to trust yourself again, about the difference between healing and revenge, between justice and cruelty, between accountability and destruction. I was writing about the truth that no one wants to hear, that redemption isn't a destination you reach, but a practice you commit to every day, that wholeness doesn't mean perfection, it means integrating all the broken and beautiful parts of yourself into something that can still create meaning in the world. My phone rang. Emma, calling from Vermont where she was packing for her move to Los Angeles. Professor Martinez, I just wanted to say thank you for everything, for seeing me when I was invisible, for teaching me that vulnerability is strength, for showing me that you can survive having your worst moment become public property and still build something beautiful from the wreckage. Emma, I said, you taught me just as much as I taught you, maybe more. What do you mean? You reminded me that the point of survival isn't just to make it through intact. It's to use what you've learned to light the way for other people walking through darkness. After we hung up, I returned to my writing. Outside my window, Los Angeles glittered like a circuit board. Millions of lights representing millions of stories, some tragic, some triumphant, most somewhere in between. 5 years ago, I'd fled this city as someone whose story was being told by others, whose worth was determined by public opinion, whose future seemed foreclosed by a single viral moment. I was returning as someone who'd learnt to tell her own story, someone who'd discovered that authenticity was more valuable than perfection, that purpose mattered more than fame, that the ability to transform pain into healing was the most powerful form of influence anyone could possess. I was returning as someone who understood that redemption wasn't about erasing your mistakes, it was about integrating them into wisdom that could serve something larger than yourself. The woman who'd screamed at her ex-boyfriend in a Tesla, who'd lost everything to viral humiliation, who'd fled to Vermont to teach college students about digital ethics. She wasn't someone to be ashamed of anymore. She was someone who'd learned that the most profound transformations happen not when we become perfect, but when we become whole.